Um, all right. You'll see me using the chat, so please keep an eye on that. You'll see folks introducing themselves, but I was just curious where folks are from. I'm in the Bay Area, California, and our weather today is horrible. It is mildly raining, so it's just a terrible day here in the Bay Area. I've never seen anything like it. Water is falling from the sky. It's shocking. Want to welcome you all. This is for the ACA 920, or the Associate Certification Atlassian Certified Associate 920 Confluence Essentials. So we're gonna treat this almost like the one I do on Mondays, which is for a different certification. The goal is to make sure we all understand how to use Confluence. There might be some of you who want to take the exam, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But really, what we'll get out of this is the ability to use Confluence and be successful and not be as frustrated as we might otherwise be. I don't know how to pronounce your name, S. John. I might just call you S. John if that's okay. It is 6 a.m. where I am. I appreciate you noticing. I do these at this time because this is when it fits into my life. I have a family, I have a job, but I still get a lot of value, and this is very rewarding for me to share what I know and to help other people out. So I am a little bit crazy, I think. Iceland up to +5 centigrade. That sounds balmy. I grew up in a place that actually had snow. I was just kind of joking a bit about the terrible weather we have here in the Bay Area. So we are going to jump in. I'm also a bit curious, who's been in one of these before? I've already seen some familiar names showing up, but it's always good to see those familiar, I'll say, faces. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob. I have been in IT or technology or systems my entire career. I started out as the help desk technician. And even that job, one thing I've noticed with every job I've had is there is some amount of knowledge that we generate and some amount of collaboration that is necessary to be successful. For example, as that help desk technician, even in university, I didn't know how to install a printer. So I had to go look that up. I had to have either someone show me or I had to find a document that would tell me, hey, here's how this works. Here's how to tie it into the network. Here's how to reset, these errors. As my career progressed, I got deeper and deeper into IT and systems. I was a project manager, I've been a consultant, and each of these roles has required me to generate, share, and consume some kind of information just to be successful. Now, I started using Confluence about 10 years ago, and that's just because I was forced to. I showed up at a job, and I said, what's our knowledge base? And someone said, Confluence. And I said, awesome. What is that? And they just pointed to a logo on the screen and said, that's it. And that was all of my training. And that's why it's important for me to run these trainings. And I have other trainings on platforms like Udemy and my own website to help people avoid that pain and that frustration. S. John, you're here too. So you're taking time out of your day to listen to someone talk about Confluence. I honestly never thought people would want to listen to me talk about a computer system, so I appreciate you've all been in here. Welcome to the ANSA. I hope I'm saying that right. Welcome, first time. And I've seen some of the more dedicated folks. Welcome from New Mexico, Susan. Good to have you. I also don't have a lot of spare time, as I mentioned, so I like putting these together a bit earlier. Interaction. Many of you have already found the chat. I like YouTube because I can reach a lot of people. These will be recorded. These will live on my channel. You can always come back to them. But please use the chat. That's the best way to ask questions. I will post follow-ups, both on my blog and on the Atlassian community, and I'll talk about other ways you can stay up to date on what I'm doing with this course and others. But if you haven't already, please subscribe and like. That helps me out, helps the channel, but also lets me know what you enjoy and like. I started doing the ACAs when I realized not everyone's a system admin, and I'll talk more about that breakdown in just a moment. But definitely use the chat, put in questions. Other people in the chat are usually very, very helpful and will jump in and start helping out. So if I miss a question, other people may help, but I will go through the chat after this and make sure I answer every question in a follow-up. A very quick agenda. We're going to start with concepts. Now, for the context of the certification, if we're doing that, these will be important because we might be asked about them on the exam. More importantly, in reality, these concepts are important because you're going to bump into them using the system, or you're going to talk to someone, or you're going to need to go get help. So knowing what these terms are is very, very useful. Emily, I got the email. Thank you for letting me know. Tanya, welcome. Uh-oh. Tanya works for Atlassian. Now I have to be on my best behavior. Uh, some folks have mentioned Discord. That's another way to get support, and I'll talk about those channels. So we'll go through some concepts, and then we're going to get hands-on. For the purposes of this training, I'll be using a Confluence Cloud Premium instance. Almost everything I'm going to show you is available in Confluence Cloud free, and I'll talk about the different flavors of Confluence when we get hands-on, and I'll show you how you can get a free version of Confluence that you can go play with and do whatever you want with. So if you don't use this at work, no worries. I'll show you how to get a free version you can play with. It won't have every feature, but it'll have 90% of it that you can use. Uh-oh. Now Tanya's watching me. Okay, everyone be nice. So a question for the group. Why are you interested in the ACA 920? Chad, welcome. Good to see you, my friend. Terry, welcome for the first time. So why are you here? Why are you coming to this training? Now, when I think of any certification, there's a couple of arguments, and depending on who you talk to, certifications are either great or they're completely useless. And it feels like there's not much middle ground. I kind of see both sides. On the one side, you will learn things earning a certification, and this is one of the reasons I like them. It's because it gives me skills and information that I don't have through experience. And I say this, like, my experience with Confluence was learned by doing, and that means I learned how to do some things really well because I had to, and that means I don't know anything at all about other things. So by taking a certification prep course or taking the exam, you're forced to learn a minimum amount of skills and things that will make your job easier, but it will also help you help others. S. John wants to take the exam. Awesome. Divsu, I hope I said that properly. You want to understand Confluence. And this is that idea of, like, there's stuff in there that we maybe don't learn or don't know about just because we haven't bumped into it yet. And let me just shift. Where can I put my head where it won't be in the way? I'm just going to leave it there. Terry has started using Confluence recently. Needs to know how to set it up. So there's a ton of different reasons. See how other people use Confluence. And there's no right or wrong reason. It's up, we should all understand why do we want to learn a thing. I like just learning how to use things. I get excitement out of getting the manual or getting the training or getting the tool and, like, figuring it out. It's like a puzzle. But you may have a reason your job requires you. You may have a reason you're just curious. You might have a reason you're frustrated and struggling. Many reasons. They also validate our skills, though. This is important for some people and important for my line of work in some places as a project manager. Many jobs that I look at require project management certification, like the project management professional or the pure management. And so having these credentials and certifications proves to other people that we know what we're talking about, at least to a bare minimum. In my mind, it helps open the door. If someone's looking at my resume and they see I have ACA 920, they're going to go, aha, this person knows Confluence. And I'll talk to them because of that, or I'll check a box saying we should interview them. Whereas if I don't have it, maybe I don't get that chance. I don't get that opportunity. So again, many reasons to want to pursue this. Now, this is the exam itself, and this is from Atlassian's site. So if you are curious about taking the exam, this is how it's broken down. And this is how I have structured the course. Each session of the course covers, one of these buckets. Categories? I don't know what to call these. So today we're talking about just an introduction to Confluence with terms and navigation. Next Friday, we'll talk about pages and basic editing, then advanced editing. There is a Tuesday session, and I did that because if I didn't, the last session would have been during Team, which is Atlassian's conference, and it would have been challenging for me to broadcast. So there's one Tuesday I slipped in on us that I'll talk about. And then we'll wrap up with advanced features. Now, the percents you see are how much of the exam are these things. So when we think about studying and preparing, if I'm nervous, I might put a lot more time into pages and basic editing than pretty much anything else, because that's over 60% of the exam is just using pages. So if you're looking at taking the exam, this is where to focus your efforts. And I'll also talk about, like, how I study and share tips and ideas as we go. I've got a couple resources I'll show you all. One that I'm probably overly excited about that I've set up. But another question for the group. How frequently do y'all use Confluence and what for? Jonathan, welcome. I'm glad you enjoy them. Good to see you. Karen, interested in certifications that are available in your current position and for future positions. That's important too. I won't say future-proof your skill set, but to make yourself ready for whatever comes next, whatever that is. Karen uses it quite a bit to look up information. Personally, I don't know how many tabs open of Confluence every day because a lot of my job is about that knowledge management. Beth, every single day. Terry, daily. All right, lots of daily users. Interesting. When I think of Confluence, I usually think of the like corporate use or my professional use. You can use it for your personal life though, and Terry's pointing out like planning vacations. Confluence can store that information. I'll be honest, I am not the best at the rigor and the discipline of actually using it in my personal life. I barely am disciplined enough in my professional life. But there's multiple use cases for it. And so I'll back up a minute. Confluence is a virtual space. It's just a knowledge base is one word. A collaboration platform is another one, where people and teams can share information. I think of Confluence as a library. It's the building that houses all of your stuff. And it can be used many ways. I've seen it used to support internal support teams, so like information technology and HR. I've seen it used to support external customers. So if you go to a website and click on help for resources, that's where you go. Emily uses it for release pages. So as updates to a product come out, you can use it to post that. And apparently they're multitasking. They're doing work while they're listening to me. Love it. Hope you don't miss anything. It can also be widely accessible. Maybe everyone at the company can get it, or it could be very narrow. Only the legal department, only human resources. So there's many ways to use this tool. And one important thing to consider when we use Confluence is how do we need to use it? Is it for our personal planning or is it for our corporation? And then how does our corporation decide to use it? A wiki in quotes, a wiki without quotes. I don't know what the difference is. Kithera, I really need to figure out how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry, my friend. Uses it for hobbies. Love that. A wiki is, yes, sorry. The term wiki for me is something like, I haven't seen, honestly, this term used too much. That said, when we think about Confluence and this exam, we need to consider the different use cases. We could be asked on the exam, what are different ways to use Confluence? And wiki could be that could be the correct answer. So we'll have to be aware of these things. Now, we also have to talk about terminology. This is essentially keywords and phrases that are going to show up. It's important to know these. Like, for me, they're second nature. Oh, yeah, we have a space and we have restrictions on this page and all these other things. But when I didn't know those words, when I didn't know what a space was or an instance, it made it really hard to find help. I could go online and try and describe, when I go into Confluence, I click on a button and I see a thing, and it took forever to get help. Whereas if I just said, a Confluence page broke with this error, I get the answer immediately. Or when I'm talking to people where I work, when I put in an IT ticket, if I can describe what's happening using the appropriate terms, that makes it much easier to get help. Kythra. Did I get it? Thank you for the phonetics. So we're going to cover some keywords. But first, another question. How have you used spaces? And I've intentionally not told you what a space is yet. We're going to get to it in just a moment. But this is one of the terms that we will have to understand, both for the exam and just to use Confluence successfully. Whew, I got it. Now I just have to remember it. So when we think of Confluence, One thing we have is our copy of Confluence, the instance. And again, this is the library. In my town, there's a library. It's this beautiful building that has books and computers and toys and whatever. But within it, it has to be organized. And imagine your library and it was just a pile of stuff in a big room. Beautiful building, but just a pile of books on the floor. It would be hard to find things, to say the least. So spaces are the organization within Confluence. They are the rooms in the library that help us organize information. Okay, this is a bit, the phrase I'll use is a deep cut. Who knows what a trapper keeper is? Can I do my... can I set up a little quiz or something? I don't know. Here we go. So while I'm talking about spaces, please contemplate what a trapper keeper is. Hang on, don't say anything yet. I'm gonna put something in the chat. Can I add more? How do I use this? There we go. I'm starting a poll, and I've never done this before, so I'm curious what will happen. Okay. We derailed a little, but there's a poll. Please answer. What is a trapper keeper? So spaces are the organization within Confluence. Again, the room in our library. Now, they can be used different ways. In many companies I work at, each department will get its own space. Engineering, human resources, IT, for them to do whatever. Other times I use it for a project. I have a big project to make a bunch of Atlassian trainings. I have a space called Atlassian Trainings, and everything about that project goes in there. Spaces give us some control too over things like access and templates and other stuff. For the purpose of this course, just understand that a space is where content is organized and how to contain everything. The good news for this training is we don't cover anything about how to manage a space, what a space admin does, all of that other stuff. We're focused solely on how do we use Confluence to be successful. Now, there is a special kind of space called a personal space that's given to every person. It just has your name. So I might have a personal space called Robert Heen, and that's where I can just do whatever I want. I can use it to make stuff. Kythra, I assume you're the one person who said Fantasy Monster. Okay. So back to the Trapper Keeper thing. When I went to school so many years ago, Trapper Keepers were the binders we would be given, and they would have, drawings on them or pictures. You could find any superhero you wanted at the time or any design on them. Trapper Keeper. A fun bit of, I think it was just Americana. I don't know, did it get over to other countries, or is that just a US thing? Now I'm going to have to go figure out that later. Okay. Another question. Oh no, Chad was talking about Lisa Franks. Emily's taking her. So Lisa Franks was one of the particular, I think, brands of Trapper Keeper. But to get us back on track, what do you use Pages for? Yes, we are. I apologize. At least I am. Again, asking this question without describing what a page is, just to see the responses that come through. But what do you use Pages for? Now, when I think of Confluence, if the instance is the library building and the space is the room or the shelf, the page is the book or piece of content, the magazine, the thing that I will need to go get and look for. It's the basic content type in Confluence. There are other types of content. We'll talk about those later. But when I think of Confluence, I think of a page. When most people think of Confluence, they think of pages. And they have a lot of different features. You can think of them somewhat like a Word doc or a Google doc, a blank page that you then add stuff to. There's different editing options. You can have different headers. You can bold and italicize. You can have different colors. You can insert images. You can do things like add something called a macro that we'll talk about later, or emojis, or links. And so really there's no limit in my mind to what a page can be used for. I use them for policies. I use them for meeting notes. I use them for project management planning. I use them just kind of as scratch paper, which is a terrible habit because then I forget to name them, and I have a lot of pages just called untitled page number 27. But it's where we put a lot of our content in Confluence. Now, a big advantage of the page is they can be organized in what's called the content hierarchy. And so when we think of our library, we can organize where the pages appear and how they appear. So we might have a page called policies, and that explains what a policy is and how to get information about them. And then nested under that are all of the actual policies, all of the pieces of information someone has to find. We'll see this live. That screenshot is teeny tiny. But just keep in mind that we can organize our pages in this thing called the content tree or hierarchy. Emily, I'm not that old. I don't get called ma'am, so I'm not quite there yet. Sorry for everyone else. Emily's been in a lot of these trainings with me, so we go back and forth with this a little bit. Alan, requirements definitions, yes. Now, you've called out, Alan, and I hope I'm saying that properly, Jira, which is another platform made by Atlassian. Many companies that happen to use Confluence also happen to use Jira for project management. We'll talk about ways that Confluence and Jira can talk, but that's something to be aware of, that these systems are connected. S-John, if you can put the phonetics of how to say your name, I'll try to say it properly. Meeting minutes. Every time I go into a meeting, I start up a Confluence page to take notes. It's just a habit I've gotten into. Chad, every page is the note area for the content. Emily doesn't even know how to answer that because they're for everything. It's also the best and the bane of my day. Yes. Liz, pages depend highly on who it's for. Front-end users or someone else. Sometimes it's an approval between two teams. Now, another concept within Confluence is notifications. Some of the things I talk about here will be things I use a lot. Other things are part of the exam, so I include them. And when I looked at the breakdown of the exam, notifications are listed. This is not something that I typically look at when I use Confluence. That's probably a mistake because my email inbox tends to explode with Confluence notifications. So I should probably learn how to use these. Now, notifications are just some kind of update from Confluence. By default, it's going to be an email, kind of like the one you see here saying, hey, you got an @mention. So there's ways to collaborate in Confluence. Or maybe a page you're watching, and I'll talk about watching when we get into the system, has changed. Someone added or removed something. Now, email is one way to get these, and in your account preferences, you can change your preference on how you get them. But you can also, your Confluence instance might also be connected to Slack or Teams or some other system that can also notify you there. Where I work, I tend to have Slack, and so we have connected Confluence to Slack, so I get things like this when someone puts in a link to a Confluence page. So there's different ways that the system can alert us to changes or updates. Emily's saying, make an Outlook rule to sort your Confluence notifications, or Gmail. Good strategy. I'd like to go into the source system that's sending the notifications and turn it off there if I can. That said, many times I do want these notifications. I just don't want them cluttering up my entire inbox. So finding a way to manage notifications is important, especially in my line of work. One of our last slides, and this is about navigation. When we look at the screen in Confluence, there can be a lot going on. Honestly, I've used it so much that I just kind of know where stuff is. And it was good for me to have to make this slide because I had to remember what is everything called. I will show you all of this live, but just to orient us, in the top left, if we click on that Confluence name, we go back to what's called our homepage. So that's a great trick. If you're ever lost or confused, you don't know how you got somewhere, you can always go home, top left. Next to that is the navigation or nav bar that has some different menus for moving through Confluence, including that nice blue create button. And you can probably guess what the create button does. It makes new content. Top right, we have search. Search is called out on the exam, and it's something that I was never shown how to use, which, looking back, I feel like the first thing everyone learns in Confluence should be how to use the search feature, because the biggest frustration that I see is folks cannot find a certain thing. Next to that, we have profile and settings, and I might have to move that little arrow when I give you all these slides. And the left is the sidebar, and honestly, that's where I spend most of my time. That includes my content hierarchy. It includes other menu items and things that I use frequently. You were, thank you. And again, we'll explore that sidebar. Now, there are some things in that sidebar like space settings, calendar, content manager that we might not need for the exam, but I still might tell you about because I think it's useful information as a basic foundational knowledge. And of course, the piece in the middle is the content. In this particular example, this is the home page of the space, but it could be the page that I'm looking at or anything else that I find. The search bar, Kythra, is invisible to most people. I'll talk about hotkeys too. This is my magical slide that tells me to go into Confluence. Before we go into Confluence, though, I do want to walk you through this thing that I'm calling the Atlassian study community. This is a page on my website. I need to update the homepage, but in here I will have a single page for each of the certifications I'm working on, assuming Chrome doesn't crash on me. There we go. I'll put this link in the chat if it will let me. There we go. This will be my clearinghouse, my homepage for everything ACA 920. So for this study session, I'll have links to these YouTube videos as they're recorded. This link goes to Atlassian's page on ACA 920. So this is my source of truth for what's on the exam, and I'll come back to this in a moment. This link will take you to the Discord channel server I've set up. I've got about a dozen people in there, so I'm curious to see how the community wants to use that. And this at the bottom, I am overly excited about, but I've put flashcards on the website for folks. When I study, or when I've studied in the past, I have made paper flashcards, and my video turned off, and that's highly unacceptable. Here we go. And it's hard to share paper flashcards. I can't mail them to you. Well, I could, actually. That would take a lot of time. But here, I've put in flashcards for everything about the exam. Liz, how do I pronounce that? Ligamatefi? Ligamatefi? Anyway, please use these flashcards if they'll help you study. I was overly amused that I could actually do some HTML coding and make this work, but I've broken it up by category. So if you need to study specifically navigation, there's a set of just navigation flashcards. I will be using these. Many of these study sessions I am putting on just so I can learn the content and do the exam. So I'm curious how folks use those and if they're useful. Okay, Liz, can you please Google LMGTFY for me? I'm curious what it means. I hope people get that joke. So this is Confluence. What we're looking at is, I think actually, Liz, I'll be honest, I use Gemini to code that, so I have no idea what it's doing. It just looked cool, and I was excited. What we're looking at is Confluence. Now, this is Confluence Cloud. There is a different version of Confluence called Data Center. For the purpose of this study session and exam, though, all we have to know is that it exists, and that's about it. Now, I mentioned a free version of Confluence. I'm going to put this link in the chat as well. This is Atlassian's official page where companies would... Uh-oh. Why does my... There we go. Where if companies want to sign up, they can. That said, you can also sign up and get a free instance all for yourself. Now, there's a couple things it doesn't have. It doesn't have a lot of the permissioning support. You're limited to 3 whiteboards. We'll talk about those later. Limited in automation runs. I'll talk about those later. And there's no Atlassian intelligence. So the AI tool doesn't exist in free. But everything else that I'm showing you will work in the free instance. So if you want to study for this exam, but you don't use Confluence at work yet, you can just click Get It Now. You can even make a free Gmail account and a throwaway email to get your own instance. But I have one of these that I use for my own project tracking, for planning these sessions, that kind of thing. And I think some other folks in the chat mentioned using it for their own personal projects. But this is a great way to do it. Again, almost everything's free It's a great resource. So this is the instance, and again, I will point out any differences and anything that's unique to what I have that you won't see in the free one. But this is that home page. So if I click up here in the top left on the word Confluence, it's going to bring me back here. Now, this particular instance is pretty quiet. There's some people working in here, but I think I'm the person who's the most active. But there are some things on this page that Confluence will serve up. So for example, if we're following people, they'll show up here. So if I'm following my boss, I would see what shows up in the feed. So this can be a way just to stay up to date on what's going on. And so I am just looking at 3 spaces. There hasn't been any updates. But maybe at my company, I choose to follow the human resources page because that tells me when the next big event is. Emily, this is a great question. The new navigation. So I have that bar up here. One of the advantages about Confluence Cloud is our companies don't have to manage much. We don't have a server that we have to have someone make sure it works. We don't have to install patches or updates. The disadvantage is the nice people at Atlassian will just add new features, and sometimes we don't hear about them. And also sometimes they test. They say, hey, half the groups will get it, half won't, and we'll see how it goes. So it's possible if you go in, you won't see this pop up, or it'll look slightly different. Another thing I'm working on doing is just a weekly roundup of Confluence updates. So Emily, I'll see if I can figure out what this means and what it will look like. And maybe if the nice people from Atlassian in here could give us a hint, that would be helpful. So this is Confluence. Just some quick navigation. Along the top, I have another home button. And if you notice I click on it, the letters G and D show up. These are hotkeys. So I could just hit G and D and that will bring me back here. And let's see if that works. Yep. So I'm just hitting the G, D, and the D key and I go here. Hotkeys do show up on the exam. If I hold Shift and question mark, this command template, command palette, I think they call it, pops up. This is something just to know that it exists. I'm really bad and I don't reference this enough, but I do use some hotkeys. So hotkeys just speed us up in the system. When I was younger in my career, someone told me if you see someone using Excel without a mouse, you should be afraid because they've memorized all the hotkeys and they can go so quick because they don't have to move around. It's faster. You don't have to memorize these hotkeys. There's a couple that you may find that I find more useful. For example, the W button will watch a piece of content automatically. The E button will edit. And then the left bracket opens and closes the sidebar. Those are some that I just happen to use. But this command palette is always accessible. Just Shift question mark and it pops right up. The other one, I think Kythra mentioned search. The / will bring us to search. That's another one that we should just tuck away. Tanya, sorry. I'm laughing because I appreciate that answer. It was not the explicit direct answer I was hoping for, but that is the correct answer. So Tanya is mentioning the community. I'll talk about this near the end about what's next. But there is a website, I was going to say a forum called the Atlassian community where you can go and get help and get training and look up stuff. Definitely worth checking out, and I'll talk about it more and explain Tanya's comment there. All right, then along the top, I've got home, I've got recent. Recent is nice. It keeps track of where I've been or what I've worked on. I do a lot of work in Confluence, so I tend to forget where I am. Or I forget, hey, what was I doing last? I was writing meeting notes for my Audi. This is a reference to a TV show called Severance. Or what have owned by me, etc. Spaces will list all the spaces that I've been to. Now you'll notice that some of these have cute little stars. This is like bookmarking a space. So again, just like I might bookmark a web page, if I click on this star, it will be added to my starred spaces. And this shows up in a couple of spots. So when I use Confluence, I try to figure out which spaces will I use a lot. Is it my personal space? Is it my team space? And I make sure I star them so they're easier for me to find. If I need to find spaces, there's a view all spaces, and this will let me search through every space that exists. And here we can see some are named after a person, like Amanda, but others are called like client portal. So this one here is a personal space that Confluence just gives people. So you have an account, you get that. Other spaces like clients portal had to be made by an admin or someone with permissions. Now, if we're very lucky, our admins will put a tag or a label on the space so we loosely know what it is. But there are some ways we can filter through here if we're just exploring. I always encourage folks to explore spaces just to see what exists. There might be some great information about the super duper project that you didn't know existed. And so by taking just a few minutes to poke around, you'll get a good idea of what's in here. You can also just search by the title though, and find things more quickly that way. Confluence has a concept of teams, organizations or groups of people within Confluence that you can @mention or include in things like documentation. I personally don't use these very much. For the purpose of the exam, know that they exist and that they can be used to share content or to @mention, but otherwise they're here. I'll talk about apps in a future session, but we can, just like on your phone, you have an app store. There's an app store for Atlassian Confluence. I don't think this instance has any apps, but you can go into an app store and download other things to run in Confluence that improve formatting or do other stuff for you. And the last one is templates. I'll talk more about templates when we talk about making pages, but just for now, be aware that we can click one button and then set up the formatting on a page as we build it, and that's a template. We come with, I think, 130, 127, some huge number of free templates, but your space admin, and I'll talk about them in a minute, can make new ones for you. So these make it easy. There's an interesting discussion going on in the chat about the university trapping people. I'm going to stay out of that one. So I'm going to go back to my homepage, and I want to go to my personal space, or the Heen Tech space. There we go. So I open it up. So now I'm in this space. I'm in that one room in Confluence that has what I think I want in there. And this is the top level page of this space, or the home page. And this is something that I'm guilty of, but you'll notice it's not updated. There's nothing useful here. Not part of the exam, I don't think, but please update your homepage. When someone comes to this page, comes to your space, this is the first thing they see. And if what they see isn't helpful, or if it doesn't explain what's in there, they may go somewhere else and not get what they need. So you can edit this just like a page. There's an edit button in the top right, or I can just hit the E key on my keyboard, and then I can come in and make changes. I'll talk about this probably in the next session when we talk more about pages. I'll get rid of that. On the left, though, is that sidebar, and this by default is visible. I can get rid of it. Like if I need to hide it, I can collapse it with the left bracket, or just click collapse. I tend to do that when I'm making content or viewing things. It frees up space. But then you'll see a whole bunch of options. Now, exactly what you see will differ based on the settings in the space. So I'm trying to think of the library analogy. Just like different rooms in a library will have different things in them, different spaces will have different things accessible or not. So if you go into a space and you don't see calendar, that can be okay. Maybe someone just flipped it off. Now, I've mentioned this term space admin a couple times. Every space has one or more people who are the administrators. Administrators? There we go. I always say that word wrong. The admins. And the admins are responsible for configuring settings, turning these things on or off, but also for doing things like troubleshooting and giving permission and helping people figure out what's going on. So knowing the space admin is really important. Many times in my work, I am the space admin because I'm the only person who knows how to do all this stuff. But if you don't know who the space admin is, it's hard to get help. You can always find who the space admins are, though. You'll see this gear called space settings. Now, I see a ton of stuff in here because I have this permission. You will probably see less, but you'll have space details. And then at the bottom, you'll have this list of admins. So if you click view all, you'll see all the people who can help you. And I do this quite a bit when I'm working and I find a new space. I go, hey, who is a space administrator? Who can help me out? And then I go into Slack, or I send an email to John Smith or to Robert Heen or to whoever, and I say, hey, I need your help I'm getting an error message. I can't find something. I need access, whatever it is. So this would have helped me a lot early in my career because I would literally walk around the office or talk to people I know and say, hey, who can help me out with this problem? And nobody knew because no one knew what a space admin was. So again, don't know if that exact thing will be on the exam, but knowing that space admins exist and what they can do for you is important to know. And I'm zooming way too much. Going back down our sidebar, shortcuts can be added. So when I think of Confluence, I want everything possible to be in Confluence so I can send my team there and I don't have to worry about other things. I know, Emily. Now, you can have shortcuts to other systems. I do this a lot with things like reporting tools or stuff that Confluence just can't do. So you might see shortcuts here. That said, I work with a lot of teams who just don't use this at all. But the important bit is the content, the stuff under that. And these are all the pages and other pieces of content. There's things like whiteboards and databases and links. And again, we'll dig more into those in another session. But here I can see they're all just kind of in there. Again, these are like the books in the library. Now, I can just click and drag and move these around if I need to. Oh, I can't. Haha. So for some reason, I don't have permission to do that. So this would be a great example of something I would have to go find a space admin to either move the content for me or help me out. That is not an uncommon error. Depending on how your organization has set up Confluence, you as the average user might not be able to do certain things. And that can be frustrating. And that's why knowing how to find the space admin and who that person is important. Because that person could then go in and give you those permissions. But to navigate, I can just click on things. And I can see here this page. Now you'll notice at the top, I've got some other information. This is the navigation path, also called the breadcrumbs of where this page lives. Pretty straightforward here, but if you'll see this arrow, this means it's a child page or child content. So it's underneath Heen Tech, and then it's under design. This can keep going. I don't know if there's a limit to how deep something can go. Best practice is not to go more than 3 or 4 levels because it gets confusing, but it does show you visually up at the top where you are. We briefly talked about Jira and that ticketing system, and there is this link. So this is telling me that this page is linked to a Jira ticket as well. Up in the top right, I have some other options. I've got my edit pencil or the E button. And then I've got comments. Comments are another, a big part of the collaboration aspect of Confluence. And I'll talk about those more probably when we dig more into pages. This is relatively new, is the ability to record Loom videos directly into Confluence. Just know that this exists. If you happen to use Loom, it's now more integrated. Loom is a new product that Atlassian acquired that allows you to record and share videos and screen captures. Makes a lot of sense that it's showing up within Confluence at this point. Thank you, Kythra. Sorry, I'm laughing at that comment. This space is a demonstration space. I should probably clean this up. What Kythra is getting at is the way these pages are set up is bad. And again, this might not be on the exam, but it's something that we all as users need to consider is how do we organize our information? The term in Kythra's world as a technical writer is information architecture. What is the structure of page and content in relation to other pages and content? Again, think of our library. Beautiful library building. If I go in, beautifully organized, there's different rooms for fiction novels and science. But then if I go into the room with science novels and they're all just on the floor in a big pile, that's not helpful. And that's what's happened here. I haven't gone through and organized this to make it useful for the people using Confluence. And so again, that might not be on the exam, but it's something that's really important. If I'm using Confluence and I'm frustrated about how this is set up, or in Kythra's word, if it just makes me sad, I should go talk to a space admin or talk to my team about fixing it. Because this structure is important. It's how someone will browse. They'll come to this space and try to find something and they can't because it's flat. There's no organization. Where was I? Oh, here's the star. So just like I can star a space, I can star content. I always encourage folks to star pages or content they use a lot, just the F key or click the star. This makes it easier to find when we search or when we browse. And then we have watching. So starring is just a bookmark. Watching is more active. If I'm watching a page, notifications will be sent to me about updates and changes. Now, I could just hit the W key, and you'll see the eye icon fills in or doesn't fill in. But if I click it, I get options. And of course, my head's in the way. Whee! There we go. I can just watch this one piece of content. I can watch it and all of its children, or I can watch everything. I don't encourage folks to watch everything in a space because you will get buried in updates if it's an active space. I tend to just watch individual pieces of content that I think I'll need later. Again, important policies, information about the team all hands or offsite, those kind of things. When should we use parent-child and when should we use folders? I love that. I won't dig too much into folders right here, but I'll direct you to a resource that you'll learn more. And I'm saying that because folders, actually, I don't know where they show up on the exam. We'll talk about them in the advanced section. But folders are another way to organize content. When do you choose to use parent-child can be kind of up to you. I tend to use a folder when I don't have content on the parent. But I've got a YouTube video that explains that for you. So that's an answer, non-answer. In my follow-up, I will include information about folders, though. Chad is yelling at us. Kyther's yelling at Atlassian. I'm just catching up here. Okay. A good discussion on folders and how to use them. I will have follow-up information about folders in my wrap-up of this. The next icon is restrictions. This is important to know. If this is red, and I'll talk more about restrictions in an upcoming training, it means only some people can see and edit the page. So this is an example of an easy way to be frustrated. You can see the page, but you can't edit it. Why not? There's a restriction. They don't want just anyone editing it. So for now, just be aware that restrictions exist. This is permissions on a page. Again, think of our library. You go into the room, you can get to most books, but some of them are behind a glass door, or you have to ask the librarian for help, that kind of thing. I can copy the link directly to this piece of content, or I can share it. And I'll talk more about sharing in upcoming trainings, but this will send an email notification to whichever group, team, or individual. So I mentioned teams earlier. I might have a team called JQuil Project Team, and they would all get a notification about this, plus a message from me. Now, it's important to keep in mind that Confluence will respect restrictions. So if I send this to everyone in this training, but I'll pick on Emily, she doesn't have access to see the page, she won't be able to view it. So Confluence will still ensure that it's secure and people don't see what they should not see. Okay, some chat. I'm trying to figure out if these are questions or just people talking about folders again. This is about all of the scheduled content. I'm going to pop back to slides. I've got one or two more. Please keep the questions coming, and I promise I'll zoom out. I want to make sure I want to talk about other resources that you all have. I've got that new webpage, and I'll go back and talk about that in a moment. That will be where I put everything I've got about this study session and others. So links to these videos, links to the Discord, blog posts with information, links to other videos, whatever. If you want to sit the exam, though, you're going to need to make time to study. We get 1 hour 5 times. That might be enough for some people to figure this out, but when I've sat any exam, I put aside some time every day to go and review my flashcards, to go and review the notes that I was taking during the exam, or during the session, to go practice. And this is especially true if you don't use Confluence at work right now, but make sure you're getting hands-on experience. Get that free instance, and I'll send a video on how to do that, so you can go practice these things and become familiar with it. I've got a session next Friday, the 21st, same time, 6 a.m. Pacific Daylight, so UTC -7. Thank you, Daylight Savings Time. But also email me. That's my email right there, robert@heen.tech. I'll be happy to answer questions, help follow up, that kind of thing. Other resources we have. Someone mentioned the community. So community.atlassian.com. Um, do, 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 do. What? I don't. What is it, Liz? I don't know. Sorry. um, so one thing I love about these trainings, I don't know everything, not by a mile. And so I really appreciate that folks are in here sharing what they know or bringing up topics or concepts like the Rewind app. I should probably go figure out what that is. Um, so this is the community. You do need an account if you want to participate. What I suggest is setting up an account with your own personal email. If you use your work email and you ever change jobs or change work emails, you'll lose access to your account. I think I have 3 or 4 versions of Rob floating around just from old jobs. You can merge accounts, it's just a pain. In here, though, they've broken it up by groups. So there's a new to Confluence group that some folks in here might benefit from. You'll see me come in here and drop my updates, help answer questions, but it's a space to go to share information and to get help. Complete aside, there is no native backup that I'm aware of. Yes, a Rob Zombie. Not the Rob Zombie, a Rob Zombie. So in here, it's just like any message board. I always encourage folks to come in here and poke around. You'll see me pop up, but again, a lot of other smart people. Up under learning, though, you can look for certifications, but you can also look for courses. Atlassian has a ton of free training. Last year at their big conference, they made it all free. So definitely worth coming in here and just seeing what exists. The training will give you a good foundation, and you can see there's a ton of stuff. Search, I forgot to show you how to search. I'll have to pop back in real quick. Chad loves the community, so definitely worth poking around the community. I neglected search really quickly. That search bar in the top right, super hidden. But if you click in it, you'll see I have Atlassian Intelligence. I'll talk more about that in a future session. Not available in the free or standard versions. But I can type in a keyword like jQuil, and this is the basic search. It'll just start showing me matches, and then I can filter them down. Maybe I know that it was updated in the past month, and it's in a certain space. And hey, I found something. I can also get to that just by typing the / on my keyboard. And so I've started using that hotkey a lot. At the bottom of this, though, there's the advanced search. And this is where we get more filters. These filters are filled in because I've already used them. But I could say, hey, only show me pages or a certain type of content. Only show me content with a certain label. We'll talk about labels in a future session. Only show me stuff that's archived or in the title. So the advanced search is a great resource and something that I didn't know existed for a long time. That'll make it much easier to find things. Chad, you've done all the free stuff, just putting off getting certified. That kind of ties back to our discussion at the start of this. It's like, why are we here? Like, I do these because I want to learn the content. I also get a kick out of earning certifications. I'm kind of a completionist that way. In my mind, like, if you have a solid reason for taking the exam, definitely do it. That said, if you're like, I don't know about the exam, but I still want to learn, that's equally valid. So it depends on where we all are in our own journey, Chad. Many of us want to prove to our employer or to ourselves that we can do the thing, and so we do the certification. And that's just as valid as, I don't want to do it, I just want to learn. I will encourage folks, though, to take some time to consider, why are you doing this? And how can I help you with that goal? This is the ACA-920 page that I have. I will keep building this out with more stuff. You'll see me starting to pick logos or mascots for each of these. I picked an ant because, at least as I think about it, ants are highly collaborative, and as a group, they can accomplish huge things where each individual can't. Confluence helps us do that. It's a collaboration platform that lets our team do more than any one individual. So the cute little ant will be around. And then resources. Again, all the YouTube links are on a playlist. The official Atlassian documentation and the Discord server. And then at the bottom, the flashcards, which I'm working on making prettier. but I will be using things like this. Is making LinkedIn look cool a valid reason? It is. If you want to blow up your LinkedIn, Emily, with just every Atlassian certification, I want to help you do that. Team Trophy Hunter. All right, folks. What other questions do you all have? What else are you curious about? Oh, wrong way. There we go. Oh, one other resource. And again, I need to update this a little. I do have a newsletter I've been putting out. It's on the main page for the Atlassian study community, where once a week I put out information about my training sessions. I'm trying to limit it just once a week on what's going on. But please sign up for this if you want to get those. It's going to include a synopsis of these sessions, as well as links out to everything else I've got going on. And that's just halfway down the main ASC page. Alan, that is a very obvious question that I really should have answered, my friend. This particular certification, if you want to take it, is $100. I will talk more about how we sign up for that in the last session, because the last session covers the advanced Confluence stuff, and that is only 8% of the exam. So I'll fit in more information about how to sign up, where we go, how we take the exam in that last one. But Alan, it's $100 for the associate level right now. I am also available for one-on-one help. So if you do want time with me one-on-one to talk about Confluence, help studying whatever, advice, consulting, please feel free to sign up here. That one I do charge for, though, just because it's a little bit more time, but more than happy to help folks out. Okay, other questions we've got. Where is my last slide? Beep. Yep, nailed it, Liz. I've been told that there is a joke in a TV show called Family Guy where a man is arguing with a woman's father to marry her, and the father doesn't want him to marry his daughter, and he offers this guy $1 million to go away and not marry him. And his response is, she may be worth $1 million to you, but to me, she's worthless. And it's funny because he meant to say priceless. So I was going to say I'm worthless, Emily, but no. I've been told that I am priceless. Terry, that is exactly my experience, and that is many people's experience. So I am glad you're here. Please, in between sessions, keep track of questions or jump into Discord and ask them there. But please don't wait to ask. I've definitely done that, and it's just harder to handle. All right, folks, I'm going to double check if I missed any questions. We've got a whole side thing about backing up. I don't know if pulling things out of trash is technically a restore point in the way a sysadmin would think of it, but that's a little bit beyond this particular training. Liz is going to pay me their entire salary for a year if I don't cover whiteboards. Is that what that's saying, Liz? I accept. All right, folks. I do want to thank you all for coming out. Yep, community is a great resource. My only challenge with community is it's asynchronous, so it can be hard, and I tend to forget to go check it, but that's my challenge with basically everything, and that's more of a Rob problem. So I hope you all found this interesting. Thank you all so much for joining me. My success metric is one person learns one thing. I tend to learn one thing in these, so that's a win for me. But I've got a session coming up Monday for a Jira certification if you want to join in. Next Tuesday, I've got one about Jira service agents, so not on Confluence, but on Jira. And then Thursday, again, general Confluence topics. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate you joining in, but please shoot me those questions. Think about what you want to learn. And I'm looking forward to seeing y'all again here soon. Oh, I will keep the chat open for a bit, though. Appreciate it. Questions? Well, that's a no-brainer, Gloria. See, this is why I have smart people in here. Next Friday. The next session will be next Friday, the 21st, then the 28th, then April 2nd, and then that Friday the 4th, I think it is. So please be on the lookout for that. Sorry to interrupt the dance music.